The village sat by the great river Nyanza, its waters the lifeblood of the people. The land was fertile, the air filled with the hum of daily life, and elders often shared tales under the shade of baobab trees. Tradition held the village together, but whispers of change were beginning to stir. Amani, at just 14, was known for her intelligence and kindness. Her name, meaning peace, carried weight in the community, a symbol of hope. She moved through the village with an energy that brought smiles, yet deep inside, she carried dreams of a world beyond the river. Her father, Umzi Kofi, was a man of unwavering tradition. Amani, he often said, our family's future rests on you. Honor the path set before you. Her mother, Naima, echoed his sentiments with gentler words but firm resolve. Amani listened but longed for freedom. She spent her evenings by the river, captivated by the griot's stories of courage and adventure. One tale, of a healer who saved her people, ignited a desire in her. I want to heal others, like the women in the stories, she confessed to Bibi Zuri, the village medicine woman. The path of a healer is heavy, child, Bibi Zuri warned. It will test your spirit. Are you ready? Amani nodded, though doubt lingered. One evening, her father gathered the family. Amani, he said, you will marry Kioni. He is wealthy and will ensure our family prospers. Her heart sank. But Baba, I want to study and learn, she protested. Mzi Kofi's voice grew firm. This is not about you. It is about family. We raised you to honor us, not chase dreams. The announcement spread quickly through the village. Elders whispered disapproval of Amani's hesitation, calling her prideful. Children avoided her, and even Naima's warmth grew distant. Isolated, Amani sat by the river, tears falling into its steady flow. She longed to escape, but knew the cost. The weight of her dreams grew heavier, pulling her toward an unknown future. Amani sat under the shade of the baobab tree, her hands idly pulling at the grass around her. The voices of the elders still echoed in her mind, their words heavy with expectation. Her father's stern reminder haunted her. You are our pride, Amani. You carry the weight of our family. Do not stumble. She clenched her fists, her chest tightening with frustration. In her heart, she longed for freedom, a life beyond the river, a future where she could heal others and follow her dreams. But every time she imagined taking that step, the image of her parents' disappointed faces froze her in place. How can I leave them? She whispered to the wind. How can I stay? Her isolation grew as the village whispered behind her back. Some called her prideful. Others warned she was cursed by her modern ideas. Even her mother, once her closest confidant, grew distant. Amani felt trapped, caught between duty and desire, like a bird, caged by invisible bars. Desperate for guidance, Amani turned to Bibi Zuri. The elder healer sat cross-legged by her fire, grinding herbs with practiced hands. Amani hesitated at the entrance of the small hut. Child, Bibi Zuri said without looking up, your steps are heavy today. What burdens your heart? Amani knelt beside her, tears brimming in her eyes. Bibi, I feel like a tree planted too close to the river. My roots drink the water, but I am drowning. I cannot breathe. The old woman stopped her grinding and fixed Amani with a sharp, knowing gaze. Have I told you the tale of the caged bird? Amani shook her head, wiping her tears. There was once a bird, beautiful and strong, who loved to sing. But one day, a man placed her in a cage, promising she would be safe. He fed her the finest seeds, gave her the purest water. Yet the bird did not sing. The man asked, "Why are you silent? I have given you everything." The bird replied, "You have given me all but the sky. My song is tied to my freedom." Amani's throat tightened. "What happened to the bird?" Bibi Zuri smiled faintly. "She opened the cage herself, child. But the wind outside was harsh, and her wings bore many scars. Still she sang, for she was free." The story lit a small flame of courage in Amani's heart, though the thought of the scars chilled her. "Thank you, Bibi," she whispered as she left, her mind racing. Days later, the village gathered under the old tree. Amani stood silently as the elders spoke, their voices like thunder in her ears. "This child has brought shame to her family," one elder declared. "She refuses the match her parents arranged. Such defiance cannot go unaddressed." Another elder added, "Amani must learn that a tree without roots cannot stand. She risks dishonoring all of us with her pride." Her parents sat nearby, their faces heavy with pain. Though her father's jaw was set, she could see the conflict in his eyes. Her mother's hands trembled in her lap, but she said nothing in Amani's defense. Amani's heart sank. The people she loved most in the world had chosen tradition over her dreams. She felt like a lone leaf torn from the branch, carried by a cold wind. That evening, as Amani sat by the river, she overheard her father speaking to a neighbor. "We raised a daughter, not a dreamer. She forgets who she is. What is the use of a child who rejects her family's path?" The words pierced her like a spear. Amani bit her lip to hold back tears, her father's voice echoing in her mind, but as the pain settled, it ignited something deeper. Resolve. "If they cannot see me for who I am," she whispered, "I will show them through my actions." In the days that followed, Amani began to prepare. She gathered small supplies, a clay jar for water, dried roots for nourishment, a small carved charm from her mother's trinket box. She moved carefully, ensuring no one noticed her plans. At night, she listened to the griot's tales in her mind, stories of heroines who faced dangers greater than hers, who overcame fear to carve new paths. She saw herself as one of them, stepping into the unknown with nothing but her courage. Still, doubt lingered. The thought of leaving her parents and the only life she had ever known brought a heaviness to her heart. But the fire within her burned brighter, fueled by the desire for freedom and purpose. One restless night, Amani dreamed. She stood on a shadowy path, the air cold and silent. Around her, the darkness pressed in, whispering her fears. "You will fail. You will lose everything. You are not strong enough." But ahead, faint and distant, she saw a light. It flickered like a star, beckoning her forward. She stepped tentatively, and the shadows pulled at her, but she kept her eyes on the light. With each step, the whispers faded, and her fear began to melt away. When she felt her hand touch the wall, she steadied herself, trusting the light to bring her to safety. It had to. When she woke, her heart raced, but her decision was clear. The dream had shown her that the path ahead would be hard, but it was her own. "I will not stay in the cage," she said softly, the dawn light breaking over the river. The village was alive with celebration. Drums pounded in rhythmic harmony, echoing across the river Nyanza. Women in vibrant garments danced in circles, their laughter blending with the hum of voices. Masks adorned with feathers and beads covered the faces of young men as they twirled and leaped, embodying the spirits of ancestors. But amidst the joy, Amani sat quietly in her hut, the light of an oil lamp casting flickering shadows on the walls. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts a storm. The laughter outside felt distant, hollow. The marriage was meant to be her family's triumph, a union that promised wealth and honor. Yet to Amani, it was a cage. As the drumming grew louder, she reached for a small sheet of parchment. Her hand trembled as she dipped a reed into ink. "Baba, Mama," she began. "You have given me everything, a home, love, and strength. But my heart yearns for a path I must walk alone. Forgive me for leaving. I carry your lessons with me, but I must follow my dreams." Tears blurred her vision as she folded the letter and placed it on her father's chair. A silent goodbye to the life she was leaving behind. The night sky was endless, speckled with stars that seemed to whisper secrets only the brave dared to hear. Amani stepped out into the cool air, clutching a small bundle of her belongings. The sounds of the celebration masked her movements as she slipped through the village, her sandals barely making a sound on the dirt paths. Her heart pounded, every shadow feeling like a watchful eye. The dense forest loomed ahead, its trees stretching tall like silent sentinels. The distant roar of the river reminded her of Bibi Zuri's words. "Freedom demands sacrifice. It is not for the faint-hearted." As she stepped deeper into the woods, the laughter and music of the village faded, replaced by the rustling leaves and the calls of nocturnal creatures. Fear clawed at her, but she pressed on, driven by the flicker of hope that had taken root in her soul. A sudden hiss froze Amani in her tracks. A snake lay coiled on the narrow path ahead, its glistening eyes fixed on her. Her breath caught, her body trembling as she took a step back. "This is the end," her mind whispered. "Turn back now." But another voice, deep and steady, rose within her. It was Bibi Zuri's voice, echoing through her memory. "The bird does not sing in the cage. It sings in the storm, where its wings bleed." Amani exhaled slowly, her fear giving way to determination. She took a step forward, then another, her eyes never leaving the snake. With deliberate movements, she skirted around it, her heart pounding as she passed. When she looked back, the snake had slithered away, leaving her path clear. The roar of the river grew louder as she approached the edge of a crumbling bridge. Its wooden planks were splintered, the ropes frayed and sagging. The river beneath churned angrily, its waters dark and unforgiving. Amani stood at the edge, her fingers gripping the frayed rope. The bridge seemed to mock her, its instability reflecting the uncertainty of her journey. "This is the point of no return," she thought. Tears filled her eyes as she gazed back in the direction of her village. The faces of her parents flashed in her mind, their love and disappointment mingled into one. "I am sorry," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. Gathering her courage, she stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned beneath her weight, but she pressed forward, one step at a time. When she reached the other side, a wave of relief washed over her. The village was now a memory, the river a boundary she could never recross. The forest opened into a clearing, where a lone baobab tree stood tall against the starry sky. Its gnarled branches stretched like arms, offering shelter to the weary. Amani collapsed at its base, her body aching from the journey. The silence around her felt overwhelming, her loneliness pressing down like a heavy cloak. For the first time, doubt crept into her heart. "What have I done?" she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Have I made a mistake?" The baobab stood unmoving, its ancient presence both comforting and indifferent. Amani rested her head against its rough bark, seeking solace in its stillness. In the quiet of the night, her eyes fluttered shut, and a vision filled her mind. She saw the bird from Bibi Zuri's tail, its feathers tattered and wings bruised. Yet the bird soared through the sky, its song piercing the air with a raw, aching beauty. Amani's heart ached at the sight, but the vision brought clarity. Freedom, she realized, came at a cost. It required strength to bear the scars and wisdom to embrace them. When she opened her eyes, the first rays of dawn were breaking through the trees. The light bathed the baobab in a golden glow, and for the first time, Amani felt a sense of peace. She stood, brushing the dust from her dress. Her path was far from over, but her resolve was stronger than ever. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she knew she would face it with courage. "I will sing," she murmured, her voice steady, "even if my wings bleed." The sun rose over the bustling town, its golden rays spilling across the cobblestone streets. People moved in harmony, the market alive with colors, sounds, and smells. Traders called out their wares, children darted between stalls, and elders sat in shaded corners, sharing wisdom over calabashes of tea. Amani stood at the edge of this vibrant world, clutching her small bundle of belongings. "This is where I begin," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. The town's diversity awed her. Unlike her quiet village, the streets were filled with people of different tongues and traditions, their stories weaving a rich tapestry. As she wandered, her eyes caught the sign of a modest clinic, tucked away from the noise. A wooden carving of a healer's staff hung above its door. Inside, she met Mama Salama, a woman with silver-threaded hair and a voice as warm as the sun. "What brings you here, child?" the healer asked, her hands busy grinding herbs. "I want to learn," Amani replied, bowing her head respectfully. "I dream of healing, of helping others." Mama Salmama studied her, eyes sharp and kind. "Healing is not just for the body, but for the soul. If you are ready to carry that weight, you may stay." Under Mama Salama's guidance, Amani flourished. She learned to blend roots and leaves into salves that soothed burns, and to brew teas that calmed restless minds. Her hands became steady, her heart focused. "You have a gift," Mama Salama said one evening as they worked by lantern light. "But remember, the healer must first heal herself. Go before you heal anyone else. Forgiveness is a matter of the heart." Amani paused, her thoughts drifting to her family. She remembered her father's stern gaze, her mother's gentle touch, and the laughter of the village children. The ache of their absence was a shadow that followed her, even in moments of joy. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" she asked, softly. Mama Salama placed a hand on her shoulder. "Forgiveness is not yours to demand, but understanding can grow if you plant the seed. Write to them, child. Let them see the woman you have become." That night, Amani sat by the window of her small room, the moonlight casting a soft glow on the parchment before her. She began to write. "Baba, Mama, I left not because I did not love you, but because I had to find myself. I carry your teachings with me every day. They guide my hands as I heal, just as your love shaped my heart. I hope you can understand that my journey was not a rejection of you, but a step toward becoming whole. She folded the letter carefully, tucking a small pouch of herbs into the envelope. The herbs were ones she had crafted with her own hands, a gift of gratitude and love. Weeks passed, and as Amani continued her work, she began to find peace. Her journey had taught her that freedom was not about leaving behind her roots, but about growing from them. She carried the scars of her choices, but they were marks of strength, not shame. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she stood in the quiet of the clinic, her thoughts drifting back to her village. She whispered to the wind, as if it might carry her voice across the river. I hope they see that I am still their Amani. Amani's story ended with a lesson shared by Mama Salama to the next apprentice who entered the clinic. The path of freedom is not smooth. It is lined with thorns. But those thorns teach you to walk carefully, with purpose. Amani learned this, and her journey is a question for all of us. What would you sacrifice to follow the path your heart chooses? The winds carried the songs of the griots, echoing the tension of Amani's life, a girl caught between two worlds. Her village stood firm in its traditions, where every child's future was written in the lines of their ancestors' stories. But Amani's heart whispered a different song, one that called her beyond the river Nyanza, beyond the boundaries of her people's expectations. Why do you not see? Her father had asked her once, his voice heavy with both love and frustration. Your path is here with us. The roots of the tree cannot abandon the soil that gives them life. But Baba, Mani replied, her voice trembling, the tree also reaches for the sun. If I stay in the shadows, I will wither. Her father's stern gaze softened for a moment, but he turned away. The arranged marriage, the plans for her future. They were not just family decisions, but a thread in the fabric of the village's traditions. Her resistance tore at that fabric, and the weight of her rebellion pressed heavily on her spirit. Yet, deep inside, she knew she could not silence the voice urging her to grow. When Amani left the village, she carried more than a bundle of belongings. She carried the pain of her family's betrayal. To them, her departure was not an act of bravery, but a dagger to their honor. Her mother's silence on that final night echoed louder than any words could have, and her father's unyielding disappointment lingered like a shadow over her every step. In her heart, she knew they grieved. We gave her everything, her father had said to the elders after her escape. Yet she turned her back on us. The elders murmured in agreement, shaking their heads at Amani's defiance. For the village, her absence was a wound, a reminder that even the strongest roots could not hold if the tree's branches stretched too far. Still, Amani's letter carried a message of hope. Baba, Mama, I have not forgotten your lessons. They guide me every day. I left to honor them in my own way. Her words, though distant, reached for reconciliation, offering a bridge between the life she left behind and the one she was building. As she journeyed, the symbols of her struggles became clear. The bird from Bibi Zuri's tale haunted her dreams, its cage a reminder of the constraints she had escaped. But in the wild, the bird's wings were torn, its song raw and bittersweet. Amani often wondered, is freedom worth this pain? Is freedom worth this pain? The landscapes she crossed mirrored the trials of her heart. The snake on the path tested her courage, its hiss a whisper of fear. The broken bridge demanded she leave her past behind, its splintered wood creaking under the weight of her choices. Each step forward was a step away from safety, but also a step closer to the life she longed for. She remembered Bibi Zuri's words. The bird sings not because it is free, but because it dares to. Amani clung to this truth, finding strength in the realization that freedom was not the absence of pain, but the ability to rise above it. In the bustling town, Amani found solace in the work of healing. Her hands, once trembling with doubt, became steady as she mended wounds and eased pain. The art of healing was more than a craft. It was an act of justice, a way to restore balance to the world around her. Through her work, Amani began to heal her own heart. She saw the faces of her family in the patience she cared for, the sternness of her father in the wrinkles of an elder, the gentleness of her mother in the eyes of a grieving woman. Each act of kindness became a thread, weaving her present and past into a tapestry of understanding. One day, Mama Salama said, "Child, healing is not about fixing what is broken. It is about teaching the broken to find their strength." These words guided Amani as she wrote her second letter home, her hands steady as she poured her heart onto the parchment. Amani's story became a lesson shared by griots across the land. It was a tale of balance, of justice found not in vengeance, but in understanding. She had left her village not to abandon it, but to honor its lessons in a way that was true to her soul. Her scars, like the bird's tattered feathers, were marks of strength, reminders that the path to freedom is never smooth. The question her story left behind lingered in the hearts of all who heard it. What would you sacrifice to follow the path your heart chooses? The tale ended not with answers, but with reflections, just as the river Nyanza flowed endlessly, carrying with it the whispers of the past and the hopes of the future.